The Motor Dream podcast is recorded on Wallamedigal land of the Eora Nation. It always was and always will be the lands of the First Nations of Australia.
This is the Motor Dream podcast.
Welcome once again to the Motor Dream podcast. I'm Connor McNally, and this is the podcast where my guests can dream a little about what they like to have in their dream garage if they had the budget and bank balance to afford it. If you've listened to the previous 3 episodes of the podcast thus far, welcome back. If you're new and wondering what it's all about, well, you've come to the right place. I tell my guests that one day they wake up and they check their phones and they discover they receive a text to say that they need to check their bank balance. They then open their bank app, they suddenly discover they have become an Elon Musk type billionaire. As soon as they discover their newfound fortune, they get an email from this mystery benefactor that tells them that they can spend anything they like and buy any car or bike or machine that they want. But there is a catch. They are only allowed 3 cars, bikes and machines in their dream garage. It sounds easy in theory, but as my previous guests have already discovered, it is very hard to decide what they would like in their dream garage, particularly when you've only got 3 to choose from. You'll get to hear from drivers and riders from within the motorsport game, as well as those who work in the motoring industry, and on the odd occasion, some prominent personalities who all share the same passion of cars as well as motoring. So make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast on your favourite platform, as well as Spotify and Spreaker, as we'll be releasing episodes every 2 weeks. Now, in this episode, I got to have a chat with a champion quizmaster. No, not Mastermind or The Chase. I'm talking about Hard Quiz. Yes, that show hosted by Tom Gleeson, where 4 poor souls face the wrath of the hard man himself with their expert topic, and they battle it out in order to win the big brass mug. In this instance, my guest went on the show in 2022 with her expert topic being the multiple winner of the Finke Desert Race and 2 times winner of Dakar, Toby Price. And lo and behold, she won the mug. Now, when she won initially, Jade Benham was the mayor of Mildura in Victoria's Sunraysia region. Since then, she successfully sought preselection and eventually was voted into the Victorian Parliament as the member of Mildura in the recent Victorian elections. And despite her now hectic workload, she maintains an active involvement in her community, which she is exceptionally proud of. And by her own admission, she's a bit of a bogan, which means she loves her cars with a huge passion. Well, third only to her first love being her husband and family, and then Toby, who's a close second. As you'll quickly discover in this chat, Jade is unashamedly proud of her support to Toby and his career, as well as her passion for all things motoring, and a choice of her dream garage is rather cool, as you'll soon discover. So I hope you enjoy my very entertaining and enjoyable chat with Jade Benham. The member for Mildura in the Victorian Parliament, Jade Benham, welcome to the Motor Dream podcast.
Hi, Connor. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you, and it's nice to actually talk to you finally, because you and I have been liaising for quite a while via social media over a little brass mug that you won on television. And let's not beat around the bush. You've made a bit of a name for yourself because of your obsession with Toby Price.
Well, I don't know. I think I've made a name for myself with a very niche market of people, which is one of the reasons I chose him to be my expert subject. He's not, unless you're in the field or you ride bikes or you're into enduro, you may not know who Toby is. And that was also one of my, I suppose, objectives of choosing him, is that he's won a couple of Dakar rallies. Like, people should know who he is. He's the best enduro racer Australia's ever seen. So
absolutely, I agree with that. He almost won the third one, and he just lost by 43 seconds.
I know.
That is a sore point, and I know because I was working on the production of that with SBS, my employer, and we were watching the live timing on that very final stage, and we could see the times just come through, and it's like, oh. No.
And it was you that told me, you made me nearly cry that day.
I'm so sorry.
That told me that he lost, because I honestly thought, I know you should know better, especially with desert racing, But I was sure this is it. I could feel it in my bones. I could feel it in my waters. And then when I got that message from you on Instagram that he was second by 43 seconds, I had to take a moment. I'll be honest. I had to sit down and have a
I
moment.
think every one of us that was working on that production and in our Sydney studios, we were just like, oh, it just was like a real kick in the guts. It just
Oh,
hurt.
yeah, it was. It did. Imagine how he feels. I mean, I'm just a little fangirl over here.
I know. Well,
Oh.
where did that love of Toby Price begin? Let alone your interest in anything that's motor related.
I'll start from the motor related stuff first because that comes way before Toby was probably even born.
Sure.
I grew up on a farm in northwestern Victoria, and I was actually never allowed to have my own dirt bike as a kid. We had quads, um, which is great, and I probably would prefer my kids to have a two-wheel motorbike now than a four-wheel. But anyway, I bring that up with my parents frequently. So I suppose growing up on a farm and learning to drive cars, tractors, quads very early on, and
Mm.
then when I got to well, I used to go around to my friends all the time and ride their brothers' dirt bikes. So one of my best friend's brothers actually taught me to ride a dirt bike, and then further down the road, I'd go in high school, go to friends of mine that had a shed full of old ones that their dad had fixed up because he loved it. So that's where the love of dirt bikes came from. And then my first boyfriend had this, and this was three-quarters of the attraction, I'll be honest. He drove this uh WB. It was it was called White Lightning. It was a WB ute
Yeah.
with a 308 in it, but he was constantly having to do it up because it was such a piece of junk. But it sounded amazing, and when it was going well, it was going really well.
Yeah.
So I suppose I by default absorbed that, and absorbed, how to maintain. And back in those days, there was no electronics in the 70s. There was no electronics. Motors were easy, if you needed to replace a carby or whatever, you could do it quite easily. So the love for anything loud in particular, and I still do love the sound of a V8, started on farms and in sheds and all that type of stuff, which I suppose I didn't think it was uncommon.
Yeah.
But it seems to me it is, especially as I've got older. My girlfriends have little to no interest in anything or getting
Wow.
their hands dirty. I know, yes.
It's very surprising to hear you say that because Mildura in particular, the northwest part of Victoria, the Sunraysia region, there's a lot of very well-known motorsport personalities that have emerged from that era, well, from that region, I should say. People
Yes.
like the Kelly brothers and Todd and Rick, Josh Waters, Cam Waters, Lee Adams even. That's a big pedigree, and a lot of people...
Phil Lamartina.
Yeah, Phil
drag
Lamartina.
racing.
And you're good friends with him as well.
Yeah. So, and I said this in my parliamentary inaugural speech, we put food on your plate and champions on racetracks, and we do, particularly in Mildura, where the racing scene in all disciplines has been huge for a really long time.
Yeah.
And there are still a lot of women in racing. Don't get me wrong. There are still a lot of women now. We've finally seen it, I think, over the last 5 to 10 years, getting onto committees and actually taking control of the sports. And I say sports because it's speedway, it's the motocross club, it's arena cross, it's, drag racing. Even Phil's wife, Sarah, is there in the pits with him every race. And, so there's a lot of women involved, but my girlfriends just kind of went a different way and didn't follow me. So but I've got boys too now. I've had 2 boys of my own, which has given me an excuse to really lean into that motorsport love, I suppose. But the love for Toby, I suppose, came when he was riding his first Dakar as a water boy. And I thought, I won't lie, who's this bogan that has managed to get almost a free ride through Dakar? So I did a little bit of research and then looked into his story, and I thought, gee whiz, this kid has put his parents through the ringer, and then just sort of, just got reading, watching races when I could, and then he ended up he had a podium finish in that first Dakar as a water boy. And I went,
pretty impressive.
very impressive. And I thought, okay, this guy can do some pretty amazing things on a motorcycle. And that was it. I just followed him from there and had the chance to sit down with him and do a podcast myself and host a mental health event with him after he'd done his shoulder. And that would have been 2 or 3 years ago. So he came to Euston, which is near where I live now, and we did a mental health event, and I got to spend the day with him then. So I won't say it was the best day of my life, but it's certainly top 3. And he told me I was in his top 3 too, because I'm one of 3 females that had interviewed him. So for him to say, and I've got it recorded, that I'm in his top 3, I am more than happy with that.
We'll definitely put a link in the show notes of that particular interview that you did, because the Vale podcast is the podcast you hosted until you recently got into Parliament. And it's actually quite an entertaining one, because you talk to a lot of people within the Sunraysia region. You've included Phil Lamatete, and we'll try and get him on the podcast at some point. But your interview with Toby, it was very entertaining. And so Toby's just one of those people that he's like, yeah, you're right, he looks broken, he sounds broken, but he's actually... When you scratch beneath the surface, he's actually a very, very smart, well-calculated racer, and he's very entertaining to watch. Like he just bides his time, and that's the one thing I learned when I worked on Dakar. He just bides his time in the early stages, and then when everyone falls by the wayside, he's right there. And he just does it right. And it's just a shame that, he made a few silly, simple mistakes, I should say. Not silly, but simple mistakes during that last stage, and it cost him. But it seems like now that karma's come back to be good to him now, because he's leading the World Rally Raid Championship, I should say. He's he's done very well in the last few events, and he could be our next 2-wheeled world champion, which is pretty impressive.
It's so impressive, and I just think he still hasn't got the... if he was a tennis player, we'd be shouting his name from the rooftops, we'd be throwing endorsements at him, but because he rides a motorcycle and drives a trophy truck, he doesn't get the accolades that he perhaps deserves in this country. And you're right, he's really strategic, for a guy that looks like Toby. And I think, and this probably says a lot to the way I'm wired as well, I think he's gorgeous. I think he's a very, very handsome man, despite the mullet. But he's really strategic in his thinking, and that's, I think, what's got him. And when I say thinking, his race thinking, he's all about strategy and how he's going to, so he is really quite clever with how he goes about racing, and that's got him to where he is now, which is on the cusp of being a new, our latest 2-wheel world champion, which is amazing.
It's quite impressive. Does your obsession with Toby, I should say, get your husband jealous, or does he support your obsession?
No, he actually, years ago, before I had the chance to meet Toby, we had discussions. My husband and I have a very, very funny relationship based on humour.
Good.
And we'd always discussed who would be our celebrity hall pass. And mine was Toby Price, up until the day that he came to Euston, and my husband Luke went, I don't know whether this actually applies. Celebrity hall pass is supposed to be from someone that you're never, ever, ever going to be in the same room with.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're going to be in the same room, much less a pub with him, maybe it shouldn't count. I went, you can watch if you want.
I count that as a celebrity hall pass.
I reckon.
Yeah, I reckon it's a hall pass situation. I must ask, though, what is his hall pass? Do I dare ask?
Well, Jennifer Lopez, pretty generic. Yeah. So I don't think he even has an Australian one, but Jennifer Lopez. Nothing groundbreaking there, nothing different. I'd like to think that, Jennifer Lopez is his hall pass, so clearly he can see some J-Lo here. Don't think that's the case.
Oh, I can see he's definitely a bit of J-Lo in there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
No, you look great. Yeah. Your interest in Toby Price, obviously, as I said, went on to Hard Quiz. You won that, and I guess that kind of thrust you into the public eye a little bit before you went into Parliament. Did that help you when you made that move to go to Parliament? Or were you always meant to be, an attention seeker that loved Toby Price?
I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah.
No. Look, when I have done quite a few TV quiz shows,
Right.
and by the time I got to hard quiz, it was the one that I really wanted to do because it's the one that I consider is the only one with street cred, because you don't win money for it. You're going on there because it's Tom Gleeson. It's a really funny concept, and it's just a good show. You win the mug and life goes on. So that was the one that I really wanted to do. But I don't think Tom Gleeson, he actually, because he's been doing for the last couple of years, been doing the Hard Quiz Live tour.
Which I've been to, yeah.
Yeah, so he was in Mildura a couple of weeks ago, and he did an interview with the ABC in Mildura, and they had said, "Oh, our local member won hard quiz last year when she was still the mayor," and he went, "Oh, I kind of feel like I've been used now to win an election." And I thought, Tom, I don't think an appearance on Hard Quiz, and even my office manager has never seen an episode of Hard Quiz.
Really?
I don't think going on Hard Quiz helped, but it's certainly helped my ego and my street cred, because I've now got the big brass mug, sits in my office, and no one can ever take that. Whatever happens in this whole politics space, fine, whatever, but no one can take away the fact that I'm a Hard Quiz champion. And I won with Toby Price, and it was one of those things that I think there was one steal, and it was a question about the Dakar Rally, which is not uncommon. And the physician that I ended up beating stole that question. But other than that, it was a pretty niche market. And everyone, when my expert subject was revealed, kind of went, "Who?" So, job done.
Job done, indeed.
Mm.
It's obviously quite clear to me you do love your cars. I guess I'm going to start by asking, are you a Ford person or are you a General Motors / Holden person?
I'm a Ford kid. I'm not, and I make no apologies for it. I tried to deny myself for a long time, and I think that was based on the boys I was hanging out with. But growing up, my family had Fords. They had Falcons and Fairlanes, and then when I was in my 20s, I decided to venture off away from the family, and I bought myself a VT Commodore.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I loved it. I loved it at the time. I loved it. And I thought I was so cool. It was white and it had really dark tinted windows, and I loved it. It was only a V6, but whatever. But no, I'm a Ford now. I'm back on the Ford bandwagon. We drive an Everest as our family car.
Nice.
So yeah. So simple answer is I'm a Ford kid, and I don't care. Hashtag sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry, indeed. Well, I'm a Ford person. I shouldn't say that, given I host a podcast. Actually, no, you know what? I don't care because I host a podcast, so I've been a Ford person all my life. But I do have a soft spot for Holdens a little bit. But no, I'm a Ford man through and through. So, I think once you establish yourself with one brand, you can't venture into another. Peter Brock once said, and I'm sure you agree, that if you said, "Oh, I used to be a Holden man," the answer was you never really were a Holden person.
No, that's exactly right. You were never really that committed. You can't used to have been. And you know what? I think that goes for anything in life, really. If you used to be this, but now you're this, well, how dedicated were you in the first place? Let's be honest. I used to have that same boyfriend that had the WB Ute, though. He later down the track had a VK Peter Brock Commodore.
Yeah.
And it was brown, a 5 litre, and it used to go. Can I swear on this podcast?
By all means.
Right. It went like the showers of shit. I loved it. And in those days, this was before my mum later actually had an XR6 Turbo that flew. But this thing was amazing. It was heavy, but it was, that VK Commodore almost got me over to. I think that's probably why I bought the VT later on, but I'm a Ford kid now. I'm back.
I love it. Absolutely love it. The identity for those that love cars here in this country, do you think now that we've both Holden and Ford now gone as manufacturers, do you think we've kind of lost our identity a little bit in terms of who we swear allegiance to, or do you think it's still there regardless of,
No, I think we absolutely have, and I hope we can get it back at some stage, but we don't have that. You know what it's like when it's Bathurst weekend, and it used to be, particularly through the 80s and 90s, Bathurst weekend was like Carlton Collingwood, but there was nothing else to see here. You're either one or the other. it was you're either Holden or you're Ford. And there was some very interesting arguments that used to happen at school, even up here. So I think we have lost it a little bit now. I think now that we're not making cars here and there's so many other imports, so many, that you've got your Chinese cars, your Japanese, you've got your European ones, which are now to a lot of people, now the aspirational type cars. I think in one way it's disappointing. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's disappointing that Australians have lost their identity, because you used to go overseas and, not see a Commodore or a Falcon. And that was the first culture shock. I remember going to America and, seeing all the different cars that we hadn't seen. Now we get all the same things. So yeah, I think it's another one of those aspects of losing manufacturing locally that will have many more flow-on effects than we actually give it credit for at the moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It is a shame, because we need that. We need that identity, and at the moment, I know that there's a huge shift in what we drive now, but it shouldn't be at the expense of that we lose manufacturer support as a result of that. It just beggars belief.
Yeah, it really does. And I just don't think that, it was always Falcon versus Commodore, and
Same.
Mustang versus Camaro just isn't the same. Yes, we've got Mustang racing now for Ford and Cam Waters that you mentioned before. Mildura boy races his Mustang, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And I do miss the days of Falcon versus Commodore, because that rivalry then did spill into the schoolyard.
And you either decide, and you instantly decided that at that time in your life when you're growing up, you either go for Ford or for Holden, and you can't swap between one or another. You had to stick with what you chose.
Exactly, and it was based on what your parents drove, because chances are, especially where I lived, it was either a Ford or a Holden, because you just weren't getting anything else. They were Australian-made affordable cars for the working class. And, it's a shame that we've lost that. However, if you've still got one, then hold on to it, because they are worth a fortune. They'll only get more collectible as the years roll on.
Oh, if you look at some of the auction prices for some of those cars, like even a GDHO Falcon is now 7 figures. And
I know.
And it's just going to keep going up.
Isn't it insane? And my grandfather had a 1975 Monaro that sat in the shed. He bought it brand new, GTS Monaro. It had the honeycomb wheels on it, except for one that he lost. My cousin has since taken it and restored it, but couldn't find those honeycomb wheels again. So it's all original except for those wheels now.
Yeah.
And that is sitting very safely tucked away in the family shed. But again, the price or the value that's been put on that is about 6 times what my nunno paid for it.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
Utterly
crazy.
This is the Motor Dream Podcast.
All right, Jade. You obviously established yourself that you love your cars, but I want to know how deep in love you are with your cars. First things first, what was the first car that you ever owned and drove?
This is embarrassing. I didn't get to pick it. My father went and he didn't purchase me a car. He went guarantor for a car loan.
Yep.
So my very 7 Ford Festiva, which I'm not proud of, but it was a Ford and it was green. Its name was Kermit. And it was a 2-door little hatchback thing. And I learned, it was still a manual. And I used to be able to drive that car and no cup holders in those days either. I used to be able to drive that car with a Macca's large Coke between my legs, have a cheeseburger in my lap, take the pickle out of the cheeseburger, and have a cigarette in my hand, because it was the 90s, don't hate me, but have a cigarette in my hand, taking the pickle out of a cheeseburger, the Coke between my legs, and eat the cheeseburger at the same time. That car taught me a lot about life. I ended up crashing it though. And it was never really the same after that. But yeah, that was my first car.
All right.
And it cost me $13,990.
That was good money in those days. That was a lot of money for people your age or our age.
It really was, but I was working in radio then. So Dad decided that he'd organise me a my very first car loan.
That's
So
pretty
thanks,
cool.
Dad.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Thanks, Dad. Thanks for helping us out.
yeah.
Speaking of which, is that car the car you wish you never owned, or is it something else that you've had in your lifetime you wish you've never owned?
I don't have any cars that I wish I didn't own because to me, having a car, being able to buy a car is a privilege.
Hmm.
So even though that car was a bit of a lemon, I think, um, but I had a car at 18 years old. I had a brand new car at 18 years old. So no, I don't think I've ever had a car. I've had many cars. There was a Peugeot that I had, a Peugeot 206 in the very early 2000s.
Oh.
And I know, a French car. Oh.
Well, actually,
However,
I do have a soft spot for Peugeot, a 405 MI16 Peugeot, something similar to
mm,
that Peter Brock once drove at the Bathurst 12 hour. Those cars were very good.
yeah, so this one was a little 206cc and it was great. It really went
Mm.
hard. I mean, they're rally cars, so I loved that car. And then I had a Mitsubishi Outlander. I've had a Commodore. I've had my Everest. I've had a couple of Prados. I don't really regret any of them.
That's a
Hmm.
pretty decent answer, actually.
Yeah.
All right. What was the first road trip that you remember going on to, and what was it like back in the days?
My first road trip that I drove myself.
Yep. Well, first road trip you did yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so after year 12, and I was a young one in year 12, my girlfriends and I, there was a group of four of us, and we decided that after year 12 was done, during that summer, we were going to go on a drive down to the Great Ocean Road, which is about a 6 hour drive from where we lived,
Hmm.
probably a bit longer.
Yeah.
One of my girlfriends, we couldn't take my car because it only had two doors, and that gave the other two the shits. So we didn't take that. But one of my other friends had I think it was about a 92 Corolla,
Yeah.
Corolla sedan. So we ended up taking that on a road trip down to the Great Ocean Road. It took us hours. One of my friends ended up pulling out last minute, so we found one of her rulers and made a caricature of her out of a ruler and some Macca's straws and stuff. So she was actually with us in spirit. We got so hideously sunburnt sitting on the beach. We also got hideously drunk one night, arrived in Apollo Bay at the Backpackers. It's still there, that white one on the corner of the Great Ocean Road.
Hmm.
I don't think it's had any renos done to it since either, but we stayed there. We arrived there at like 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was a great time. 18-year-old girls, again, just driving down the road, smoking cigarettes and eating cheeseburgers and drinking beers and having a road trip in a little white Corolla.
Well, I think you've just established that eating in cars, you should do it. Is that a yes
Oh,
or a no?
yeah. Yeah, and because I drive, so absolutely, I always say to the kids when we get a new car, now we're not going to eat in this car. We're going to keep it clean. It lasts about an hour. We drive such long distances, and I know I shouldn't because I'm forever having to vacuum the cars and whatever. But like my cars to me are almost a safe space. Like I'm
Mm.
quite happy in the car.
Yeah.
So of course I have to eat because I'm also happy when I'm eating. So marry the two up, and obviously I'm going to eat in the car. And I've always got snacks in my glove box. There is always a bag of Red Frogs or a chocolate bar, or there's always something in my glove box. And my husband knows it too. If he's hungry at the footy or wherever, he knows he can open the glove box. There's going to be food in there.
Well, that's going to be a controversial topic to some people that you eat in your own car. You're right.
Oh,
You're right
well.
though. When you have kids, I guess you can't keep that promise for long because they're just going to be hungry all the time.
Yeah, that's right. And we had a couple of Prados when the kids were really young, and
Yeah.
they, instead of the center console, they have the fridge from it must have been a Prado. I want to say it wasn't a GLX. It must have been we had a Kakadu, but they had it's fridge in the middle. So we'd be able to literally keep snacks cold and bottles and things cold.
That's pretty
So of
cool.
course yeah, very cool. Which was why I got that rather than the GXL Land Cruiser.
What about pet peeves with like car fads and that? Is there anything in particular that you don't like? Like, the stick family stickers that are on the back of the cars. Do you find them annoying?
I do. I was going to say 4 cylinders, but no, we'll go with this. Oh,
No.
Oh,
Say
controversial.
Say it. Why 4 cylinders?
I'm a V8 girl. I like meat. I like grunt. I like power. And yes, I've driven 4 cylinders. All my hatchbacks have been 4 cylinders, whatever. But when there's magazines dedicated to, and Fast and the Furious have done this, I absolutely blame them for fast fours, for turbos, all that kind of stuff. Great, that's fine. There's a market for it. I'm just not interested in it. I'd much rather 5-litre old, like I said, an old WB or a HQ with a 308 in it and cruise down the highway that way.
And no stick family stickers on the back of it.
No, those stick family. No, you shouldn't be sticking stickers on your car anyway, as far as I'm concerned. What are you defacing your car for? No just no stickers at all, period.
Did you have any
Leave your car alone.
Did you have any stickers when you had your first few cars, or you just left it?
No, I just left it. The only stickers I really ever had on my car was when I was running a campaign and I had the Everest wrapped with the Jade Benham for Mildura campaign stuff all over it. And then literally the day after the election, my husband peeled those off as well. So we are a non-sticker family.
What's something that you wish more people knew about cars?
How to change a tyre, for one. The amount of friends and colleagues that don't know just basic stuff. And I don't know whether it was where I went to school, but we got taught all this stuff. We got taught at a very early age how to change a tyre, how to change spark plugs, how to check oil, how to fill your water. Basic, very, very basic vehicle maintenance is the one thing that I knew, that I wish everyone knew. If we're going to get more technical, what's one thing that I wish people knew about cars? I wish people would understand the value in their own motor vehicle. And what I mean by that is, yes, you get what you pay for to a point. I've always said, and this is going to be controversial too, but I've said this for 20, 30 years, there's no excuse for a Porsche, and there isn't. I don't believe. They're not practical. Yes, there are Porsche lovers, but I don't think there's any excuse for a Porsche.
What if you race Porsches?
Well, if you race Porsches, then okay, different. You're racing them, fine.
Fine.
Ferraris are still better, but whatever.
Only because you're half Italian, so you can say that.
Well, yes and no, but it's not even. I thought it would be more of a controversial subject in my household because my husband is McLaren, but it's not. I bought my son. It's his 5th birthday today, actually, and I bought him the Speed Ferrari car kit for his birthday.
Yeah,
and he said to me, I was telling him about Ferraris, and I said, mate, they're the best. They're the best cars on the planet. I said, Dad might disagree with me, but even Dad went, yeah, no, you're right. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. But what I mean by that is, they're not necessary. Ferraris, Porsches, McLarens, they're not really necessary to get around. I wish people understood the value in, for example, a Ford Everest that retails at 62 grand thereabouts, as compared to a Prado. Yeah, different finishings and whatever, but an Everest with a 2-litre bi-turbo engine is as good, if not better value than a V8 Land Cruiser, as far as as far as capacity goes.
And bang for your buck, basically.
And bang for your buck, yeah. I mean, that 2-litre bi-turbo engine that is in the Ford Everest, the last model of Ford Everest, I don't know about the new one, that's a cracking motor. A cracking motor. It's a really good car when we're talking about family cars. So I wish people just understood a little bit more about the value for money in their motor vehicles, and that you don't have to spend a fortune to actually get a really bloody good car.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a very, very good point. Controversial, but definitely a very good point. I do tend to agree with it. All right. one more question? What's the weirdest thing that's in your Everest right now?
Well, I have kids, so who knows what's in the back? There's probably a chicken nugget in there somewhere.
Rotting away.
But yeah, oh no, chicken nuggets don't rot. There's far too many preservatives.
Oh,
in
actually,
them.
no,
They just
you're
go
right.
hard.
You're right.
Yeah. They don't even go moldy.
That's true.
In the glove box, we had a road trip not that long ago, and I tend to put weird stuff in my glove box like a capsicum, so I always win at I Spy. So there could be a capsicum in the glove box.
It's true. Well, you got to keep the kids entertained.
Well, this is exactly right. And it would be something food related in the glove box or the center console.
I'd take that as a pretty decent answer, if I do say so myself. All right. Jade Benham, we get to the crux of the podcast. One day you wake up and you get a text message on your phone. You check it and it says, please check your bank balance. You then open the bank app on your phone and you instantly discover that your bank balance has gone to Elon Musk territory. You have become an instant billionaire. And then you then get an email saying you can spend whatever you like on your dream car, but you're only allowed to have 3 in your dream garage. So, please tell me what your first car would be in your dream garage.
My mind has gone to all sorts of places like, where did this money come from? Is this legal? I'm a member of parliament. I need to declare this and all of those kind of things first. So I would be panicked first and foremost.
Okay.
However,
But if you weren't
exactly.
This is an imaginary world here, so that's fine.
In my dream world where I could spend whatever I wanted, I'm actually pretty easily pleased. My dream car, it has been since I was a kid, is a red 1965 Mustang convertible GT with black pony interior and silver spoke wheels.
Left or right-hand drive?
Left-hand drive.
Good.
Yeah, keep it all original. I don't want any of this conversion stuff. And I thought it wasn't a red one, but I was at a show and shine recently and there was a 66 there, and I don't like the shape of the 66 front ends, but my dream car is that red 65 Mustang GT, which would set me back, it's not overly expensive, but it would set me back 6 figures now.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I'm just looking at a photo now of an example. When you look at that design, the original Mustangs were like, I'm going to swear a little bit here. They were the shit. They were
shit hot.
They were beautiful. And they still look good now. Like, you can look at that car more than 60 years on and you can go, wow, that car looks absolutely amazing. Even though it doesn't have any of the safety features that we take for granted today, it just looks outstandingly beautiful, inside and out. And even with that little 253 cubic inch V8 in it, it's just, just divine.
But at 253, like, it's still a beautiful sounding motor.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's not a 308, but, 253 is fine. And they don't have all the safety features, but they are made out of steel. You run into that in an Audi or a BMW now, and that thing's not coming off second best. You can bet your bottom dollar.
Yeah.
Because they are heavy and they were made to last. And here we are, 60 years later, and I can still buy one pretty much whenever I want, really. There's always plenty on the market, but yeah. So that's my first one. That's been my dream car for a while, and I will have one day.
Maybe one day, maybe after you leave Parliament, or would you get one whilst you're in Parliament? Or do you have to be a bit more, practical about it?
I think I have to be a bit more pragmatic while I'm in Parliament, and it's probably not a good look to go collecting cars.
No, that's true. That's true.
But anyway, it would look, if one crossed my path and it was exactly what I wanted, I'd do anything in my power to acquire it. Let's be honest, because I've loved it. I've loved it forever.
I can actually see you in it. I can actually mentally see you in it. No, I think you would look absolutely awesome in it. I do have friends of mine in Bendigo, actually, motorsport colleagues in Bendigo, who own a Mustang, and they absolutely adore it.
Yeah, I've got friends. I've got one particular friend who has multiple Mustangs, but he hasn't got a 65. He's got a 64 and he's got a 66.
Mm.
And the 66 rounded the front end that year. So they're not quite as good looking, but yeah, they are beautiful cars, and everyone that's got one hasn't got a bad word to say about them.
That's true.
I don't know about the modern ones. The modern ones, you know, they made them in a 4-cylinder, so please.
I can't.
Exactly.
I can't. No, I
Neither
can't.
can I.
If I owned a
Yeah.
Mustang, it would be the Fox Body Mustang from the mid-'80s, the ones that Dick Johnson drove back in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, right.
I would own one
Yes.
of those because that's my first memory of a Mustang.
Yeah, well, you're obviously a bit younger than I am, Connor.
Slightly younger. Slightly younger. Not that much, but slightly younger.
So, look, that's my first one. The other two, I don't have any other dream cars. That's it. But I do have some dream bikes. And again, one of them is very attainable. In fact, I could probably go and buy it tomorrow, but
Yeah.
I just haven't. And that is a Kawasaki KLX.
Ooh.
Yeah. And people go, why on earth would you want a KLX and not a KX? I'm sentimentally attached to the KLX from when I first learnt to ride dirt bikes. One of the guys that used to come riding with us was, you know, the popular boy at high school, and he was really hot, and he rode a KLX. So now I want a Kawasaki KLX, and I probably get a 300. And they're not, you know, I could pick one of those up for under 10 grand.
Yeah.
And then if I'm really going to go all out, perhaps a Ducati Super Sport 950.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I want to go back before we go to the Ducati. The Kawasaki. Now, you obviously would go for a 300, so which totally understand. They look absolutely great. I mean, as an off-road bike, beautiful. Would that partly have to do with maybe that obsession with Toby when he raced for Kawasaki back in the day in Supercross?
Actually, no, because if it had anything to do with the obsession with Toby, I wouldn't knock back a KTM. Don't get me wrong. I would love a KTM. I wouldn't be able to, and I've said this for a long time, I wouldn't trust myself on anything bigger than a 300 because I would kill myself because I have no sense of fear, and my ambition outweighs my ability a lot of the time on a motorcycle, and I've proven that in the last couple of years and put myself in hospital.
Ooh,
So
okay.
yeah, so I as much as I would love a KTM, I'd go a KTM 250 exec maybe.
Yeah.
But I still think that's maybe a bit too much bike for me. So the Kawasaki seems like, and I'm riding a CRF at the moment, a Honda CRF, which is a great, you know, ag bike, farm bike.
Yeah.
There's nothing too special. They're very reliable. The kids are riding CRFs as well.
Speaking
But
of Hondas,
if I had my choice.
yes. Speaking of Hondas, have you ridden the Honda Postie bike? Have you actually got on one? And, really?
No, I haven't. The Postie bike.
Yeah.
No.
They're an agricultural bike of sorts. I know that everyone.
Oh, I do know someone that's got one, but no, I haven't ridden one.
Really, I'm
No.
very surprised because they look. If I was to ever ride a motorbike, I think the very first bike I would like to learn on at the very least would be that kind of bike because it's just it's so cool.
Yeah, they're out. I mean, they're cool and they're pretty safe. Like as
Yeah.
far as they haven't got a lot of pickup and they haven't got a lot of torque, but no, we're also not using bikes on the farm for practical reasons.
Yeah.
We're going out on bikes to have fun and jump out of dry dams and you know, chase kangaroos and stuff like that. I probably shouldn't say that, but that's what we do. We're doing it for fun.
Exactly.
We're not doing it for practical reasons. That's what we've got mules for. So, yeah, I would love look, if someone came up to me tomorrow and said, I've got this KTM, do you want it? You can have it for a couple of grand. I'd take it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if I could have anything I want, I would have a Kawasaki KLX.
Seems like
Simple girl, simple needs.
And the Kawasaki's are a very simple bike. They are just very good as a practical bike. I'm
that's right.
a bit of a fan of them.
Yeah.
But I love the third choice, the Ducati Supersport 950, which is, I guess, an evolution of the Panigale V4R, which is just beautiful. I mean, the Ducati V4R is a superbike, racing superbike. I mean, that goes very, very quick. We've seen it in the hands of Josh Waters, who's a Mildura boy himself. He's done very well in the Australian Superbike Championship in recent times. And the caddies, they not only have great torque with the engine, but they sound absolutely beautiful, and they just look beautiful standing still. It's just a beautiful bike.
Yeah. Which means if I didn't ever get the chance to ride it that often, it would be a very beautiful motorcycle-shaped sculpture in the shed. Because they do look beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're about 24.5 grand though.
Yeah, that's okay. You told me I could have anything I wanted.
That's true. That's
I've got
true.
Elon Musk.
That's very
Well
true.
in my bank account.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I would probably have one of those. Just looking at one right now, I mean, they are just absolutely beautiful. And I know a few people from Ducati, and they'll be if they ever listen to this, they'll be very, very happy you said that, because it is just a beautiful piece of machinery.
You feel free to give the people from Ducati my number, and I would be more than happy to come and do a ride day wherever, because road bikes and sports bikes are very, very new to me. Like, I figured that's where once my knees, my hips, my shoulders can't put up with dirt bikes anymore, I'm going to have to get onto a road bike. And, if I could have anything I want, then why on earth wouldn't you want a super sport? Because they are gorgeous. And I've got the sentimental attachment to Ducati too, I think.
Is it just that Italian aspect
I think so.
of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know why. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, Josh Waters, but long before that, Ducati's always, but when I see one, the ears always prick up, and I'll always, turn my head to see where it's come from.
Does it maybe like the fact that Troy Bayliss won a few World Superbike titles on a Ducati?
Yeah, maybe. I honestly, I couldn't tell you where it comes from, but Ducati, when I think about road bikes and super bikes, Ducati is really the only name I would ever think of.
Well, your three machines in your garage: the Kawasaki KLX, the Ducati Supersport 950, and the 1965 Ford Mustang convertible. I mean, that's a very diverse array of machines there, and I'm absolutely impressed by that. I don't think you could add anything else to that. That's pretty cool.
It is pretty diverse, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your classic car, your practical ag bike, and then the bike that just sits in the garage and does absolutely nothing, but you just look at it and you go, oh.
Oh, I would go for a ride on it on Sundays, but I'd be happy to leave it in the shed.
I think that's a very, for you, being a member of parliament, that's a very smart choice.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, I think it's not much else more for me to say, but that was quite an impressive array of machines, and that's a nice way to end this chat with you. It's been an absolute privilege to have a chat with you. Finally, I know we've chatted for quite a while online, and we've egged each other on when it comes to football and everything else, but we won't talk about that. But it's nice to talk about cars and bikes with you, both in person and online, and it's been great, and I hope we get to do it more often, and hopefully we get to meet in person and talk about cars, because it's great when you interact with people in this game, because when they're very passionate about it, the passion comes through, and you can just have conversations with them for just hours on end. And sometimes you look at the time and you think, where's the time gone?
Yeah.
You've just been talking about cars or bikes, and it's just a joy when you talk about it.
It really is. And when you can find someone that doesn't mind you talking about it and doesn't call you a bogan or whatever, like my husband does still when I carry on about a motor or whatever, and goes, oh God, you really are just a bogan. Yes, I am. You know what? And I don't care. So leave me alone. So I've appreciated the chat, Connor, a lot. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much for coming on, and all the best for the foreseeable future in Victorian Parliament. I hope it doesn't eat you alive for the next few years.
No, we'll be right. I've been in media for 15 years, so I've got skin like leather. We're all good.
Thanks, Jade. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Connor. Go Storm.
Oh, you had to, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Well, I just want to say to you, Jade, that despite how terrible my rugby league team is right now, my beloved Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs whipped the butts of Melbourne Storm earlier this season, and if nothing else, I'll take that as my highlight of 2023. Thank you again to Jade and her team within the Victorian Parliament for allowing me to conduct this interview, and we wish her all the very best in her endeavours within the halls of Spring Street. You can follow Jade on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram just by searching Jade Benham MP. Speaking of the socials, that's where you can find the podcast itself with the hashtag and handle The Motor Dream, and I'm pleased to say that we are now on TikTok and on Threads. And don't forget to head across to the Motor Dream podcast website at themotordream.com.au, where you can find all previous episodes, show notes and information on my guests and the show itself. As always, please like and subscribe to the podcast via your favourite podcast platform, as well as Spotify and Spreaker. And don't forget to leave some feedback. Your input, be it good or bad, is always appreciated and helps improve the show. Thank you as always for listening, and I hope you can join me again for another edition of the Motor Dream podcast real soon. I'm Connor McNally, and remember to please drive safe out on the roads. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Motor Dream podcast. This series is proudly produced by Beast Productions.